At this time of year, there's always hundreds of videos, blogs, or forum requests for big new features ahead of a Football Manager release. Quite frankly, though, many of them, as we know, are too ambitious, unrealistic, or just outright not particularly useful. Today, though, we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to highlight three of my biggest mini frustrations with Football Manager, because let's be honest, we all have them, in the hope that they'll be addressed for FM24 to polish the game. Firstly, I should say this is not a negative moaning video as I love the game, but we all want to see improvement, and there are three little things to add realism that I like to see. These also aren't revolutionary changes I'm looking at, but addressing small issues that can make the playing experience more immersive, a big difference, and reduce my frustration significantly, in some cases at least. If you're looking forward to this one, then please do chuck a thumbs up on the video and check out our discount link for the channel partner HelloFresh UK. That's in the description below. For now though, let's head straight into my first one. Here's number 3. At number 3 is something I've been asking about for so many years, which is probably why the frustration's built up. The short corner, or lack of, drives me crazy in Football Manager. There's two elements to this request, both of which have existed for some time. Firstly, when running down the clock, short corners are a crucial element of game management in the real footballing world. Not in Football Manager though, which refuses to organise a short corner no matter how many time-wasting tactics you have on. This wouldn't be a huge issue if you could manually resolve the problem, but you can't. Even in general set-piece routines, you can only set one player to come short for a corner. This, if we're being fair, is outdated and doesn't reflect the modern football world at all, where the 3v2 short corner is now pretty commonly used. What's more, in Football Manager 2023, even if you request a short corner, as we saw in the Manchester United stint of our head coach save, and send a player short, the taker will often ignore them and just cross the ball as soon as that player's being marked. It's been a huge aggravation to me for years in Football Manager, as the current set-piece creator, particularly for corners, does not allow for increasingly common and realistic football gameplay. Of course, the big hope is that the new graphics animation engine for FM25 will resolve that, but as we're on the subject of set-pieces, let's move on to something else in that realm, which has started newly annoying me in this year's edition. At number 2 is something that regular watchers of my video stories or live streams will probably be very bored of me talking about by now. Yes, it's the free kick wall. Not just the free kick wall though, specifically the wall setup for a direct free kick when the taker is of the same footedness as the side of the pitch the free kick's on. I've only noticed this being a real issue for FM23, but the sheer number of free kick goals is largely caused by the wall setup not covering the post when you've got that situation. So a left-footed taker on the left side or a right-footed taker on the right side. The opposite to what you're used to seeing goals from regularly in real life. This huge gap that the wall should be covering on the post of its side leaves the perfect space for a taker to aim at, with the goalkeeper having next to no chance of getting across in time. What makes this worse is again the realism element. Rather than seeing those realistic, glorious curl free kicks over the wall and round the keeper, the Ward-Prowse or going back a bit the David Beckham special, we're just seeing free kicks being hit into a ludicrous space that shouldn't exist and not even really going near the corner of the goal. This bugs me as it leads not just to an unrealistic number of free kick goals, but also an unrealistic feel to those scored. It's another set-piece issue I love to see resolved for FM24 or certainly for FM25 when a new graphics engine comes in. Surely it can't be that hard though in the interim to put the wall in a sensible place where it would be in real life. But let's move away from the issue of set-pieces before I can bust a little bit and talk about my number 1 frustration. I'll let you decide if this is mini or not, because at number 1 is attendances. Now, those of you that have followed my Build a Nation save this year will know that stadium glitches is also part of this, but we'll come back to that later on. However, let's start with attendances in general. I feel personally that many fan bases and competitions are drastically underrated in Football Manager. For example, just a few years into the game, it's not uncommon to see the likes of Old Trafford, Anfield, St James's Park not much more than half full for fairly big cup games. Realistically, this just wouldn't happen regularly with the size of their fan bases in the real world. I have to question research a little bit here too. In my new Bristol City save on YouTube, our first season game at Luton's Kenilworth Road, the team I support of course, attracted 6,500 fans, less than the maxed out 7,200 season ticket holders the club had in real life for that season, before you even consider the season ticket waiting list, general sale, or away fans attending the game. I feel attendances are often too low across the board, so I'm not singling out a club or any bias or anything like that, but they are particularly painful in Builder Nation saves. In smaller footballing countries, as we've seen this year, even neutral football fans would be clamouring for a ticket to watch a Champions League game against a Real Madrid, a Chelsea or an Ajax. To have half capacity crowds for these games is both infuriating and unrealistic, which is before you even get to the stadium glitches. So that's something I'd like to see addressed, thinking about how big this game is for the nation and how big it is for other teams in the nation. Where are neutral football fans being considered here that go and do the 92 or a ground hopping or whatever? Particularly against big opposition, you're likely to draw in huge crowds for these games, which just isn't reflected in Football Manager at present. Let's move on to stadium glitches though, because we've had a bit of a unique scenario, haven't we, in our FM23 Builder Nation save with Distillery. In this edition of Football Manager, our ground has been eligible to host Champions League group stage football, but not qualifiers for the Champions League or group stage football for the lesser European competitions, such as the Europa League or the Conference League. Once in the match itself, for those Champions League games, all terrace stands are completely empty in the animation engine, despite tickets being sold according to the attendance figure. I don't remember attendances being a big issue at all until the last couple of editions of the game, but they are now massively undervalued across the game for me, so it does seem a little bit weird, and while of course it is just a mini frustration in terms of how it looks when you go into a game or on a number that's on the attendance screen, it does of course have a huge knock-on impact on finances for clubs, particularly at lower levels, so it is something that needs to be in the right ballpark. On that subject, and possibly part of the reason for it, is ticket prices need to be addressed too, because I don't know if you look very often at your club's general screen to see what the average ticket price are, but they're often miles out, and I can tell you that with no doubt at all. On a more positive note on this one, I do hope that the continued integration of supporter confidence resolves this naturally over the next year or two, but at the moment, it's probably one of my biggest little complaints about Football Manager. I don't really care about the animation glitches and the aesthetic appeal of it, and I don't really mind about what the number says, but it does have a big impact on finances for so many clubs, and it can hold back your save, or in contrast, it can give you a bit of a false boost if it goes the other way. So as a result, it's probably the little thing I'd most like to see resolved in FM24. So those are just my top 3 mini frustrations in Football Manager at present. The game overall, as I said at the start, is brilliant, and my view of it is overwhelmingly positive. But it also prides itself on realism and has the most realistic football simulation. And that's why I made this video, because you have to strive for the best every time and try and improve those little things. We know that the big things aren't going to get addressed until FM25 because of the animation engine change. So if we can see the game polished in these little areas next year, it's the type of thing that would make me a very happy man. If you enjoyed this one, please do add a thumbs up to the video and let me know if you agree with my top 3. You can find plenty more of these top 3 videos up in the eye above, most of them guide types rather than looking at features and such, as well as my 2 long-term stories which continue during the week. Both of those playlists are up there now. Subscribe and turn that notification bell on to stay up to date with them, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for a huge episode from my Builder Nation story.